Hi, Red Hail. Thank you for being with us. I'm delighted to have you as a guest, and I look forward to sharing your wisdom and experiences with our audiences.
Thanks, Dean. Appreciate you having me in the invite. I'm really look forward to getting into our discussion today.
In your information that you provide and your website and so forth regarding psychedelics, you couch yourself as a consciousness explorer. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
can we begin with uh, sometimes leading question in your explorations? What is the nature of consciousness as you have determined it to be?
Oh, nice. Just a straight dive into the deep end. I love it. Um, so yes, so it's one of the ideas that one of the reasons I named it the Church of Psychedelics is because we have this big question, right? We're a spiritual being having a human experience. And I approach a lot of the answers from that platform of we're a spiritual being having a human experience. Otherwise, it's really that's a what do they say? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And the idea of consciousness is as big as an elephant conceptually. And so to start to break it into components, to start having these discussions and to create orientation around there's a spiritual being side, right? That's the study of source consciousness. That's our connection, our relationship with divinity, with the other side, with source, with God, the creator, with anything. That's the study of source consciousness. That's the we are a spiritual being component. Then we are having a human experience. That comes from the idea of the practice of expanding our awareness. We see the world through a cone of awareness. This is what we see. And when we turn around, that same cone follows us around with what we're perceiving as an awareness of ourself, our role, our place in an environment, and then the meaning of what we're experiencing of being in the place in that environment. So I feel that to even approach the discussion is for people to have it and start to see what it really means for themselves is to start breaking down into components these how these questions land for you. So again, starting with we're a spiritual being having a human experience. We're in the phase of humanity about where life is about coming back into balance now. Living in alignment is a topic of discussion we're having more so almost now than ever in the last 50, 60, 70 years. Living in alignment with the natural laws of the earth, living in alignment with the natural laws of nature and the cosmos. This type of thinking, I think, starting now and going into the future, it's going to just be an everyday commonplace practice in society to think this way. So, again, in order to get to that place, the study of source consciousness, we're a spiritual being, and the practice of expanding awareness, having a human experience, is very much needed. And natural psychedelics, these things are allies for humans that open the doors of our perception. Natural psychedelics, they're a spiritual technology. As a matter of fact, the next part about that, about this dive into consciousness, is when you're working with natural psychedelics, they're called entheogens. And entheogens, that word is what's the word, etymological. So there's a etymology point. There's a word, entheogen. That etymology comes from the Greek roots thousands of years ago. So they already knew about it even then. En for entheogen, en means within. And theos for theogen, theo means God or divine or divinity. And gen means to generate or to become. So entheogen into the English language literally translates into generating the divine within, or even more accurate, which would be bringing forth God from within. So when we talk about the kingdom of heaven, the God was, the kingdom of heaven is within, or you are in co-creation with you are in the image of the Creator. You have God is from within. It knew from that far back, dealing with psychedelic medicine, is that bringing forth God from within, even the word itself that they used, they understood there was this symbiotic relationship to the understanding of our role in consciousness and our awareness. And I think that it starts with those two things. Now that you start to, again, eat the elephant one bite at a time, starting with some sort of phrase or some sort of doorway that you would walk through with the understanding of how to start to break this big question down and then put it all back together. So bringing forth the God from within, working with natural psychedelics to expand awareness and to study source consciousness. I think that's where we start, and, psychedelic mushrooms, they're here now. They're back in not very long. This is like literally within the last 48 months, 24 to 48 months, they're now back legally, not in every state and not in every way. That's under a certain federal act called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
Mm-hmm.
Formally organized through the United States government's organizational like elements that identify like through the IRS and the DEA and things like that, has to be structured in a certain way in order to have a sincere spiritual belief system of which people can participate in and use psilocybin as sacrament to help them with these ideas of consciousness and awareness and to help them on that spiritual path. That's how all of this comes together. About now that we have these back in society, they're now back in the hands of humanity. And it's just gonna, and it's, when we saw cannabis spread across the United States as quickly as it did, psychedelics from the legislative side that we're tracking is happening even faster. So, and at different levels, some are clinical research, some is just basic, some is other types of research, some is decriminalization, meaning that Dean and Doug we can grow it and cultivate it and share it. We can do everything except for sell it to one another. That's what decrim or decriminalization means. Decrim, that word came out of the San Francisco Bay Area with a lot of the activists getting psychedelics and bringing it into awareness and legislation. So decrim or decriminalization is happening in a lot of parts of the country. You're seeing a lot right now about ibogaine, another natural plant medicine. So you're hearing like about psilocybin curing like um, cluster migraine headaches and having a significant impact into epilepsy and neurological issues like multiple sclerosis or cerebral palsy or those type of neurological syndromes and maladies. And even more so, we're doing work with paraplegics, and they have spinal cord injuries that don't allow them to have any electrical signals in certain parts of their body. However, 20 to 30 minutes after taking a microdose of psilocybin, all of a sudden their body is having spasticity and movement, where doctors, scientists, researchers are saying you should not be having any movement at all. You are literally have a spinal cord injury that cuts off electrical, neurological or neuro receptors in that area, yet they're still having movement that they've never had before. Some from that are into 20 to 30 years being paralyzed to like a couple years being paralyzed, all receiving the ones reporting receiving the same results. So yes, natural plant medicines, psychedelics, expansion of awareness and deeper relationship with consciousness are all topics that are going to be tumbling back into the lexicon of Western society as it becomes more available and the information starts to come out with some of these really big like claims and anecdotal experiences around. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one of the biggest ones: Alzheimer's patients with sundowners, Alzheimer's, dementia, all that whole spectrum of that type of malady. They're working with psilocybin and getting amazing results that they've never seen before. Like, anyway, I don't want to make too big of claims, but anybody can just, research that and see for yourself
Mm-hmm.
what people are saying about that. It's truly extraordinary. Almost, if it wasn't here again, it would be almost unbelievable. But that's the stuff that's happening with just this short amount of time. Psilocybin's been back in the ability for people to even talk about it openly. So that's a string of consciousness there, I guess, as an example. So I'll pause there and
That's good. That's great. I
reorient.
didn't want to interrupt you. You were on a roll.
Yeah, I can kind of tell. So I'll pause there and we can reorient to the topic again.
Okay, well let's return to your to beginning statements where spiritual beings have a human experience.
Mhm.
How do you describe the nature of our experiences in each of those classifications? Is our what is our spirit? What is our human experience, and what distinguishes the two?
Yeah, the human experience is just our self-awareness. That's the first part. So it kind of goes back to our mission as the Church of Psychedelics. We're an international spiritual community helping people awaken to greater self-awareness, expanded consciousness, and a deeper relationship with God, the creator. Through, the rest of it is like through the safe and legal and intentional use of psilocybin as sacrament. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
know that's a mouthful, but there's a lot of meaning within that. We don't have to go much into that. This isn't, is a big promotion for the church, but there's a lot of meaning in that, impact in that single sentence. So going back to the question is, what's the nature of the different categories of this? The
Mm-hmm.
first one is what is our human experience? It's self-awareness. That's the biggest one. That's the reason that self-awareness is so,
Is that is that the nature of our experience, or
yeah.
is that the objective of our experience?
I think it has a foot in both camps. I think it is both the nature of our experience because it's the nature of being self-aware. Dean, excellent question, because self-awareness is the common denominator to meaningful spiritual development. Meaning we already have a relationship with it. We just have to figure out how to have a deeper relationship with it. Meaning like personal development, that has everything. That's greater self-awareness. If you're working on spirituality, greater self-awareness. If you're working in meditation, it requires greater self-awareness. If you're doing the shadow work, it requires greater self-awareness. And psilocybin offers the expansion of that self-awareness. So we see the world through this cone, right? We make meaning of the world through this cone. And when we have the spiritual technology like psilocybin to help us expand our cone of awareness, that fringe information comes in and it requires us, once we see it, we have to make meaning out of it. And when we have this extra like ring of information that's now available that we see, and we're starting to make the relationships between seemingly unrelated things, we're starting to understand those, then those have to be organized and placed somewhere. So it makes us drop our, um, or it makes us have a greater sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? You have to suspend your belief, your rigid belief system. You have to suspend that, and you have to walk into this idea of tolerance of new information coming in. And so there's a lot of spiritual work with tolerance, compassion with yourself, empathy for doing the work, of the acceptance of organizing it into your human nature, into your human makeup. So that's the first one, is self-awareness. Um, and then we basically start with that. And once you have self-awareness, that kind of helps to bring your humanity into center, into um, into getting your center of gravity. Once you have your humanity around self-awareness, your center of gravity, then you can move into the consciousness side of thing. What is my relationship with consciousness? Those are usually things like um, presence, harmony, being inside of the knowing, faith and hope. I'll give you an example of consciousness. I just saw this. We had had this conversation with a friend the other day, and they were talking about a movie coming out. And when there's something going on, and then you see a couple people in a cabin in a forest, and they're on the front porch, and all of the animals, all of a sudden there's something going on. All of the animals, the raccoons and the birds are flying, and the deer are running, and the bear, are all moving in the same direction. And the people on the porch are going like, I wonder what they're doing. What's going on in the forest? See, we're disconnected. we're outside of the knowing. We're outside of that realm of communication that's happening in the natural world, and we're no longer a part of it. We used to be, but we're outside of it now. That's consciousness. There's a this this veil that is it's a very light veil between what we are aware of and what's the consciousness that's behind it. And so, though, that's why I said we kind of move into these ideas. We have concepts that address our spiritual being, and we have concepts that address our human experience. And when you start to break them into those components, it's a lot. It's allows you to quote unquote eat that elephant, and come into understanding of the relationship of what both of those mean for you.
Let me express a couple things to you, and I invite you to comment, to critique what I'm offering. Humanity begins in a condition of unawareness. It's by design. And the reason that it is designed that way is we learn by analogy. We learn by comparison and contrast. If all we experience was what we like, we wouldn't know what we like because we have nothing to compare it to. And so the design of the nature of our human experience begins with the required formatting of our perceptions to be unconscious until we reach a point where we awaken. And that's an often misunderstood concept in today's world. My experience of awakening is the first time in our life when we take that awareness that we all have. It's an inherent characteristic that we have. And we, for the first time, invert that awareness. Up to that point, our awareness is pointed outside of us. And the majority of the earthly population is still experiencing that directionally awareness that's pointed outside of themselves because they are trying to trick the world into giving them more of what they like.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to watch someone's reactions to the identity that you created in order to know how to modify your identity to try to make it more effective in tricking them. And you're describing self-awareness, which it's necessary to take that same awareness and turn it around and point it inside of you. And usually the first realization is the step one that is associated with the 12 steps program, whichever 12-step program. What you're really doing is realizing that you're not happy, regardless of the conventional successes you may be achieving. You realize that regardless of that, you're not happy, which is in and of itself the awakening that when you first turn that awareness around inside. And in so doing, my understanding of hallucinogenics, and each hallucinogenic has different attributes. They essentially are the same principled effect, but they have certain degrees, variable degrees that allow us the opportunities. Your description of focus and expanding that focus, I think, is excellent because my description of higher consciousness, or as we evolve and further our role on the enlightenment path, is very analogous to our vision. When we at this range of consciousness, when we say focus on something, we still maintain a periphery vision, but it's blurred. We're aware that it's there, but we're not able to comprehend all of it at the same time. But as our consciousness rises, then our periphery vision that heretofore has been blurred becomes more in focus. And so we see more of what's before us by expanding our capacity to see that experience. Is that analogous to what you're describing? That the results or the effects of the psilocybins?
Yeah, Dean, I think it's definitely a parallel discussion to arrive at the same concept. It's basically this principle of oneness, right? This idea of unity. And that's where it starts to get a little bit amorphous for people to think about. You know, the this principle of oneness that consciousness inherently comes with as part of that discussion, this concept of unity around consciousness, because it's kind of a sea of consciousness, right? It's where we all come from, and it's all where we all return to, is this sea of consciousness. That's why we call it the source. You know, it's where we all come from, and it's all where we return to, but it's not an end source or a beginning source. It's just part of the momentum, like a gyre in an ocean, right? It builds and it builds and it cultivates energy, and then it exchanges that energy and then redirects that energy into the next gyre. And that's how the world kind of moves around, weather and such like that. Consciousness is much the same. You know, the foundation beneath every law of energy, consciousness, and creation, it teaches that everything from galaxies to atoms, from our thought and then coalescing into form, you know, emerges from this single unified field of intelligence, this sea of source. You know, there is no separation, only the appearance of it. And that's why we have like this idea there's no separation, only, what I say, the illusion of it. It's like
Mhm.
that's our ego, right? The ego is the illusion of separation. So that's part of our humanness. The ego is the lens of our awareness of how we see the world. Basically, the ego is constantly making meaning of, what does that mean to me? What's in it for me? How does that make me look? You know, those type of things, right? It's the me. It's the ego. How does it, and it's that piece of it. So when we basically start to have this type of contemplation of this, of the understanding of what that means to me, we're no longer seeing life as what it's happening to us, but life as it's happening like through us and as us. That's the big one. It's not things are happening to me, they're happening through us and as us. Every act of compassion, every thought of love, every conscious breath starts to become in alignment with that unified field, that source consciousness, the discussion of God, the divine, divinity. That's where I think that's why it's very watercolory. You know, the one concept easily blends into the next concept so easy. That's why I say when we eat the elephant, we're getting back to this idea of kind of breaking these subjects apart. Otherwise, you're doing such a deep dive into such a big ocean of information of this idea of unity consciousness, or, you know, that it's difficult to grasp when you come outside of the argument, like how to integrate it, how to make that make sense and from a usability standpoint in your everyday life. So how do we take these big concepts like consciousness, eat them, metabolize them into some sort of usable energy that forms our humanity, to who we are, and then we can walk around the world in a better way. So our field of awareness through consciousness, the study of consciousness, that field of awareness, now we learn how to build the skill sets to expand that awareness. And each time that diameter of awareness gets a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, right? It stretches. And I think it stretches. I think that analogy fits on many different things. It stretches our consciousness. It stretches our mindset. It stretches our awareness of the world. It helps us respond to things versus react to things. It helps us drop into the present moment in a much easier way when we need to be more present in times of conflict or understanding or creation of things. So that's how I would approach it, is that kind of like, how do we reflect on this concept of a unified field, quantum entanglement, a web of interconnection, things that are, because when we talk about a unified field, it applies to so many things. It just echoes throughout so many different topics of discussion. So I think that's it. It's the human implication.
Have you arrived at a definition of consciousness?
I don't know. I think it moves. I think it's a sentient concept that evolves with you and from you. And I think from every experience that you have, I think the definition continues to change. So I would say right now, I'm more of the idea of just working with it. There is and I'm going to mangle this. And Dean, you definitely are. You can tell.
You're warning me before you.
Yeah, because you may
Okay.
actually know this, or correct me if you kind of catch on. You've heard this before, but let's say there's a Buddhist monk, and one of the new monks asks this elder, is like, so master, you've been known to achieve enlightenment. What did you do before enlightenment? And he goes, well, I chop wood and carry water. And he goes, well, now that you achieved enlightenment, what do you do now? And he's like, I chop wood and carry water. So it's just the idea that this kind of like, what is the definition of consciousness? I think whatever it is, it's more of the idea of the practice of the development of a relationship with consciousness versus more of like, can you define your relationship at any given time? Like like the definition of like, how would you define your relationship with your wife or your husband or your significant other? What is your relationship with your work? What is your relationship with So I think that all of those tend to, when you say, is there a definition? I think it moves, it changes, it morphs, it transmutes, it evolves. So, um, so I guess that's a really long explanation to your very simple question. Do I have a definition for consciousness? And I would just say it's about chopping wood and carrying water. It's about walking the talk. It's about, answering the big questions in life and having that consciousness have that resonance since you're here with those big questions. Like, what's the meaning of life? Well, to live it, to fill it up with all of the stuff that's around you, to be tangible and to be emotional with things, touch them, feel them, understand them, have your heart broken, go through grief, find a great love in your life, those type of things. It's to really take this take advantage of the human experience while you're here. I think that's a definition of being conscious. There's also the idea of like, you can be conscious, or you can like practicing consciousness. You can also have the idea of like being conscious. You're not going to be conscious all the time. Life happens, things come along, knock us down. We have to get back up. So this idea of being conscious is building a skill set and ability to be able to return to that center point of consciousness once we get knocked off the pedestal. How do we return to the being of that? And once you can do that at the level of consciousness, returning to the being conscious, then you can return to a lot of things like joy and happiness. You're not going to become at this ecstatic level of joy constantly. But if you can return to the realm of joy, when things get knocked you off of it, it's like a buoy in an ocean, right? The ocean can be raging and moving this buoy around and dipping it under the water and having it, but no matter what, the buoy will always pop to the surface. It has that ability to return to a certain state of being. So if you have the ability to return to a buoyant sense of joy, or you have a buoyant sense of joy to be able to know to return to, then happiness, the expression of that joy, will be a lot more common in your life with that ability. So study of consciousness to determine your definition of it. My definition of it is a place to return to, and then that will force multiply into many different areas of life to be able to return to the that sense of energy that's in a good place rather than more of a negative place.
Okay. We are a mind, body, spirit. And psilocybin is physical. It affects the body part. But because it affects the body part, it alters the relationship of the body with the mind and the spirit. Have you come to any conclusions on how it is changing while we are under the effects of the psilocybin or the psychedelic? How it affects the nature of that relationship while we were under the effects of the psilocybin?
Yeah, from a mind, body, living your daily life. I think that the integration really comes from these three places you just really well laid out. Like for instance, mind. What does our mind do? Makes meaning. It reflects on us, ideas.
What is a mind?
I think the mind is different than the brain. I think the brain is a mass, right? It's a biological mass of all these different biological components. The mind is a resonant field around the mind that draws draws energy and pushes energy around the mind. As a result, it's like the mycorrhiza filaments between a mycelial network and the roots of a tree. There's a network, and then there's the roots of the tree, and these things have to come together and they don't touch. What's in between is these little fibers that translates the idea of where do the nutrients go and what do you need, and where it moves information, data, nutrients between each other. That's the mycorrhiza between the filament, the mycelial network, and the roots of a plant or a tree. That's what connects the two. And the mind is that thing that connects source consciousness to our brain. The mind is the mycorrhiza. The mind is the filaments. The mind is the thing that is it's that component of communication between the two. That's what the mind is in how I see it.
Okay. Let me throw this idea out for you and get your comments on it. If I said that the mind is nothing more than a bundle of beliefs,
Yeah.
which is our identity, and we create the mind with our experiences, and the mind informs the body how to be, which is the brain as
Yeah.
well. And under the presumption that the mind and the brain are interconnected in that fashion, not the same entity, but the brain, the condition of the body is the result of how the brain has told it to be. And when we experience a psychedelic, that changes that relationship. Have you how would you express that relationship is changed by the hallucinogenic effect?
How the brain is changed by the hallucinogenic effect of the
Well,
mind.
the relationship of the mind and the brain. What change in that relationship? And I'm imposing my summary on you, and that may not be fair. I apologize for that. But under that assumption, I'll lead you a little bit more, if I may. My understanding of how a hallucinogenic works is that when we process a thought, the mind is responsible for processing the thought because the mind is the lens, but it is not actually the processor in and of itself. The spirit is actually the processor. And the spirit has certain capabilities according to its range of consciousness. The mind is created as the lens, just like a camera lens. If the camera lens is blue, then everything you
Yeah.
take a picture of is going to have a blue tint to it. And the mind actually is what instructs the condition of the body and how the body to be. When we experience a hallucinogenic effect, then that for a temporary period of time um, severs that brain body relationship to allow the mind to and the spirit to experience itself without the constraints of the body and how the body has been told to be. Because invariably, if the mind is distorted, the brain is going to be distorted as a result of the instructions that the mind has given it.
Yeah. Okay.
Would that align with your understanding of with your experience?
Yeah, and no, I really enjoy the way that you frame it because, like I said just a bit earlier, I can see when you explain it that way where you're, um, I can understand how you came to that explanation, and it's in parallel. I just use a different type of wording. We just have two different lives and two different world experiences, and
Sure, we have different lenses.
yeah, we have different lenses, right? The mind. so,
Yeah, right.
so the way I look at it is what, and you're asking like, how does the effect of psilocybin or just even natural plant medicines when you have this other expanded awareness, what's it doing? So I, I approach this, and if you allow me just a little bit of a latitude, because I know
Sure,
it's
absolutely.
just a little bit of a roundabout way to kind of to intersect where your explanation as well is I have that conversation through the concept of integration because how the mind is influenced by this psychedelic experience. I think what it does is changes the it changes the fundamental way that we understand these seemingly unrelated things. Like for instance, the mind, like you said, our lens, how we talk to ourselves, how we make meaning of our experience, we have a certain way that we talk. Like when I say like, please heal me from this malady. It's like when we pray or we wish for something. I want this, fix this in my life, give me this, take away this thing that I don't want, whatever those are, we say it a certain way. So like, for instance, a big, uh, a big, idea around psychedelics is this healing component. You hear a lot about PTSD and some of the biggest traumas that people have working with psychedelics in order to help treat these things. So heal me is a big one. So I think with psychedelics, what I notice when I'm working with people and I see this, they stop saying like heal me. And the mind now is shifted in its approach in relationship to the body. And instead of saying heal me, the new question says, show me the root of my pain. See, that relationship, heal me is too vague, but show me the root is a clear direction,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like saying like, I want this, like some people like they pursue love, like I want love. And instead of saying I want love, instead of say like, teach me about love. See, like, I want this word I want is without understanding. It's like a toddler. They see something on a store shelf and they're in the cart and they're reaching for it. They just want it. They don't understand. There's no relationship to it. Teach me versus I want. Teach me about love versus I want love. Teach me is to seek understanding. And once you understand it, now you understand your role in it, right? That
It
transition of
requires you to
mind,
assume
the lens of the
responsibility for
mind.
your participation.
Yeah, exactly. The lens of the mind into the body into the action of the world. So instead of saying like, fix me, that's another one. People want to get fixed. They want to transmute from one thing in life. They're constantly worrying, or they're ashamed about something about themselves or whatever. They say like, instead of saying like, fix my guilt, fix my shame, basically you're asking like to like help me understand this, help me integrate my shame, right? To fix is outside of you, but to help me integrate, now you and the medicine are working together. It's like saying like, give me a purpose, or what's my purpose? Instead of saying, God, give me purpose. Instead of saying, help me understand my purpose. It's different.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
take away my fear versus help me face my fear. The words take away, it skips the work,
Right.
right? It skips the
Right.
human work of taking it away. It's like someone just takes it away. It's like instant relief. Somebody else did it for you.
Well,
Somebody else
it's
created
a
it.
salvation mentality that so much of the population is enthralled
You
with.
got it. Exactly.
Yeah.
But and to your point, you called it the something where you go inside. And when you do that, when you're saying, I just kind of look at it when you say, help me face my fear,
Hmm.
That word's help me face it. It turns the search inward. It's a
Well, what is
clear
that search? What is that search?
Yes, exactly. It's the clear
It's
intention to
awareness, isn't it?
transform, right? It's the inward search of help me face it.
But isn't it the awareness that is the search? That's the search engine that we have available to us.
Well said. Yeah, I think so. I think that's part of it for sure. Because you run across it in that when you go down that path of self-discovery, inward journey, on a spiritual path, you could say it many different ways. It's about show me the root, teach me the issue, help me integrate the experience, help me understand the relationship between the seemingly unrelated thing, help me face is starts the journey inward. I think the idea is this journey inward is the answer to that question of how does the mind through the lens integrate through the body and then action out into the world.
Well, that inward journey is the only thing that's permanent. Everything else is temporary. The more we're involved with outwardly directed awareness, the more we realize the transient of that aspect of our experience. And I've interviewed numerous people that have experienced NDEs or near-death experience. And one of the common factors is that they are amazed that they still have a perception of self after they have left their body, and
It takes a little
they
while to
still they still feel like, wait, I'm still me. I just don't have a body now.
I've had a near death experience and I felt exactly the same. Mine was more on the interim of slipping into that.
Hmm.
I could hear the doctor saying like that how is he awake? You've given him enough whatever that was to put me under, because I was going into this like coma type state.
Uh-huh.
Uh there were and so that was I went to this other place to make it. I had a decision. It was very interesting and it was like all you have to do is just would you like to return to source now or and some people say like you're not done and they send you back. Mine was
Hmm.
more of like like a medium, like an interim, not like well, what do they call that when you go into like a um an in between stage? You're not
Yeah, you're in purgatory.
purgatory. Thank you.
Yeah.
It wasn't nefarious or it wasn't doom
Right.
like that or it was just like it was this in between and I felt that I had this very sense of being in an old world situation but understanding that this is not real. We're just giving you this was just a random um environment that I could not see. It was like somebody took Vaseline and put a dab of Vaseline over each one of my eyes. I can kind of like see like shapes and everything was clear in my ears. I could hear everything auditory, very clear. And it was almost like I had just time warped into some sort of like imagine if somebody like a time traveler just showed up in the middle of a street where everybody was walking around and everybody just saw this person like appear. That's what it was like for me. It was like I appeared and people around were definitely at a higher consciousness level. They were inside of a different consciousness.
Did
And
did Morpheus offer you a red pill or a blue pill?
no, but it wasn't like that. It was very much almost like a old world, like busy street. And I just
Hmm.
appeared and someone I could hear the thoughts almost not almost, but telepathically in my mind saying like, oh, don't worry. It's not like not don't worry, but it was like, because there's no actual words. It
Hmm.
was this feeling of someone like noticing like, oh, he's in the in between at the moment. I'll watch him like that.
Hmm.
Like, don't worry, like I'll
You were
watch him.
being
Like
cared
no
for.
car hits him in the street or something.
Yeah, you were being cared for while you made this decision.
Exactly. And I had the question, I'm like, is this it was such an easy choice. I'm like, I can make the choice together. Like, and it was almost like, don't be over dramatic. It was literally like that. It was just hold on a moment. There's some things that are being done. I've got you. You're safe. And then right at the end of it, it's like, okay, um, it wasn't a choice. It was like, okay, you are gonna be going back now.
Hmm.
And it was this sense of like, while I was there, this telepathic moment, and I've had a few in life, and this one was definitely different. because I had it from more of the real world versus the divine world, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this understanding, like this feeling of like, oh, and I was like in my mind, like, don't forget this feeling. Don't forget this feeling. Like, if you can hold on to this feeling, you can return to it, because this is kind of like, this is the mindset or the spiritual, like, um, channel or resonant tone or vibration, or more like the idea of, what do they call it when you tune in? This
Mm-hmm.
is the station. This
Yeah.
is the station you turn into, and you can return here. Like, I can feel this. And I, even right now talking about it, I can sense that feeling. So when I want to, I can revisit that element, and then I do a lot of consciousness work there,
So you got
because
to
I
peek
went
behind
to
the
that
curtain.
place before. I know what it feels like. I
Yeah,
know
you
what it
got to peek
smells
behind
like.
the curtain.
Yeah, that was behind the curtain. And I was lucky enough to have been studying this as a student for so long, that when I was in that, there was this consciousness about me to be able to remember to, like, pin this place, like remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. I can still kind of return there into that realm of knowledge. It doesn't come as obviously as clear as it was, because I didn't have to, I didn't have to, I'm not the reciprocity of exchanging my potential life for that experience, to be in that place, is no longer there, but I can return to that sense
Mm-hmm.
that's there. And once I'm in that sense, there's a lot of things available
Mm-hmm.
to build skills and abilities around. But yeah, I think that's what it is. It's about re um reprogramming or restructuring your relationship with things. Like we just said, don't say heal me, say like, instead say like, show me the root of my pain, or versus I want, teach me, or fix this in me, or versus help me integrate.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you start to live in alignment with consciousness. And when you start to live in alignment, then a lot more becomes available to you through that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. Um, we all share the same range of consciousness, uh,
Yeah.
and to experience an incarnation in this range of consciousness, we have to experience what's called the forgetting. And the forgetting is what we forget is the closeness that we have with source and everybody else. And so that's part of what makes the nature of this experience so intense, is that forgetting, and which enhances our perception of autonomy, as opposed to the more of a unified effect. And um, the hallucinogenics, I like to use Richard Alpern's experience, Ram Dass. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
I am.
Richard was a uh, one of the early psychologists at Harvard, along with Timothy Leary and another guy that experimented with LSD. And Timothy went off on creating the turn on, tune in, and drop out craze of the '60s. And Ram Dass, he eventually became Ram Dass. Richard Alpern realized that there was a really great experience under the LSD, but that was a peek behind the curtain, and it was incumbent upon him to undergo the task of healing within himself the things that prevented him from being in that condition of being all the time.
Hmm.
And so he had some great discoveries and personal advancements along the enlightenment path as a result of that. And so, your prescription is a little bit more persistent use of the psilocybin to reinvent that, or revisit that condition of being than what he experienced with the LSD or any of the hallucinogenics. But I'm a big advocate of meditation. I think most of the experiences that you are seeking or experiencing from the psilocybin are available through meditation. And I personally, undertaken that transitional journey from our physical perception into our metaphysical self, and began that journey in my higher self, preaching, well, you don't want to go past that point. You can go up to there, but that's really as far as you want to go.
There is definitely, right, Dean. It's like definitely there's a moment of like, uh-oh, like it truly is like if I can make a choice right now and this, and there's a whole different reality right behind that choice. So
Yeah,
exactly
it
what
is.
you're talking
But
about.
it's it's a remarkably pleasant feeling and pleasant experience. Just all stress, all tension, it all is gone. It doesn't exist in that condition of being. And
Well said. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that idea of meditation, I share the same. I believe that meditation is my number one. My dad taught me how to meditate when I was 8 years old.
oh, cool.
And shortly after that, I got into martial arts.
Hmm.
And um, and in martial arts, we had a instructor that was Hong Sik Kim. He brought Taekwondo to North America, and it
Okay.
was in Portland, Oregon, where I was at. And so one of his direct instructors, along with Hong Sik Kim, both that's where I learned. So I learned this was not it's not modern day. It's not like you can be 10 years old and be a black belt. That's
Hmm.
like like YMCA level martial arts. This
Right.
martial arts was I was the only kid, um being 8, 9 years old. I was the only kid in that martial arts class for like
Mm.
years, and
Yeah.
it was not a cool element, and you didn't have fun things, and it was definitely like a martial arts practice, and it smelled
It
like it.
wasn't something to do. The mom took you there after school so you'd have something to do and she wouldn't have to.
No, exactly. It wasn't an after school activity. This
Yeah.
was, my dad was just one of those personalities, and he saw it, and he's like, this is what you're going to do. And he talked to the instructor. But anyway, what I'm getting is that my dad taught me to practice meditation at 8. And it's one of the best things I am so grateful to my father for doing that.
Yeah.
It has, it set a foundation at that time to where my mindset was, that practice of being able to build that type of mindset is just invaluable. And then going into martial arts, another very structured meditation was the beginning and at the end of every lesson, of
Hmm.
every class. And it wasn't just a basic like, okay, breathe in and breathe out. It was a transcendental type of meditation. At
Hmm.
8 years old, it really structures the brain in a very certain way. 9 years old, 10 years old, I was there for like 3 or 4 few years into that, and then moved on. And but that was that shaped me in a big way. Let me say why, because I'm kind of I'm going back in the feeling of time and how powerful that was. But meditation is it's the practice of presence. And presence is the practice that awakens all of the others.
Hmm.
And that's why I feel that it's so important, because everything you come from a place of centered, and then you react or respond from there,
Hmm.
versus just reacting. But in the presence, then you're able to be present with whatever's happening around you, whatever you're responding to. Responding versus reacting is one of the most transformative practices that a person can integrate into their daily life. Um,
Well, but in order to do that, you have to have that inwardly directed awareness. You have to have your awareness inside
yes,
of you.
yes, it develops conscious choice, where
Yeah.
once that you had reaction, automatic behavior, stimulus response. And once you can get past some of the basics of this, you know, like the stimulus response, just binary this or that, A equals B, and you break out of that, and now you're making conscious choice versus automatic behavior. That's now you're starting to get into the realm of like emotional mastery,
Hmm.
where you're responding versus reacting. You're creating a space. Meditation and dropping into the present moment is creating a space in between that stimulus and response, right? That moment of awareness. In that space, emotional intelligence is born in that space. Reacting, that's just being driven by all of our past conditioning and fears and past wounds and blah blah blah, right? And
Right.
responding,
Right. That
that's
identity.
driven, yeah, now responding, now you're from a sense of presence. So awareness, intention, your teachings now come into play. Chop wood, carry water. Like that's now you're coming back to just the essence um of response. This shift just allows you to like regulate your emotions rather than be ruled by them.
Yeah.
And over time, it just builds inner peace,
Yeah.
resilience, the ability to travel inward at will and comfortably.
Hmm. Um, Carl Jung described that as responding with your true self as opposed to your false self, your identity, your ego, your
Mm,
hierophant, whatever phrase works for you. But
yeah.
that the true self is always right on. It's who we all really are. That's that spirit that we keep alluding to that seems to be so vague for so many people.
Mm.
I'm delighted in this conversation. I hope that you have too. I know that it will be helpful to our population and to our listeners. Before we depart, would you have some words of wisdom or some information on you that you would like to share with our listening audience?
I think the words of wisdom, and first of all, Dean, um, much gratitude to you. Like I really appreciate you not, asking the easy questions or keeping it shallow. These are very important topics to dialogue about and to like have open discussion and see what everybody else thinks about it. Because, we've had, we can go down the path of, talking about religion and dogma and all that other stuff. I get it. Not only that, but trust me, I get the irony that I'm the founder of the Church of Psychedelics. On top of it, I understand the nuance behind that. But we are literally going to be having these type of discussions as a society going forward in a much more progressive and amplified way than we've ever had it before. You can tell that it's happening. You can scroll through social media and see how just more of the everyday person that may not, just concentrating on family and work and, that type of thing, um, is now, this is even seeping into the discussions around those dining room tables as well. So
Mhm.
I would say that I don't know if there's any more words of wisdom. I think that how we started it was a really good way because was a good way to share some words of wisdom. And it doesn't apply to everybody. It's just the way that it helped me.
Mhm.
And I would say the two biggest things out of this is one, start to break these big esoteric concepts. Like I said, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, starts to break them down into core components of questions that are relational to you. You don't have to start with the big amorphous, what is the meaning of life? You can just say like, why do I feel this way about that thing? So start with the big questions or start with a way to break the questions down. Mine was, I go back to one phrase. It's been said many different ways over the centuries. I put it together just in this way. We are a spiritual being having a human experience. And so either the question starts to go or the contemplation goes through one of those two doorways, and they usually braid together and meet up and intersect somewhere down the line.
Mhm.
But I pick one of the doorways, spiritual being or the human experience side. And then that starts to help me break it down. The second thing is that we talked about the biggest thing that I believe is the most significant help in somebody's life after you have these experiences or you come through some sort of like aha moment after contemplation, it's integration. So the next part is work on integration. And then after integration, like how do you take this peak experience and don't go chasing another peak experience? Use your peak experience that you just had and integrate it into your everyday life so it serves you. It's a
Mhm.
value to you. It's a benefit of you walking around this world. And then the last component we just actually landed on, and which is meditation. Pick a mindfulness practice and then really work with it. Be consistent with it. And if you're going to be working with natural plant medicines, start with microdosing psilocybin. Just start in that component right there. You're not going to feel the psychedelic experience. necessarily. You're going to more feel like it's working in the background. It's a participatory medicine. People talk about the placebo effect of psilocybin and microdosing. That's because it's only been around for 48 months, and Western science is just now catching up to it. The dosages are different, the strains are different, the preparation is different, the cultivation is different for each one of those, the constants and the constant and the controls are different in each one of those. So that's why they're having a mix of placebo effects are the results. But
Okay.
psilocybin is a sentient medicine, and it has a participatory element to it that 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 has a lot to do with your experience and how you process and who you are and what's your intention and what's your expectation and what's your relationship to medicine, your relationship to consciousness and awareness. There's all of those elements that have to participate in the outcome of working with psilocybin. So start with microdosing psilocybin to begin, and that'll give you a baseline. It's working in the background, so your intuition and your instincts are starting to brighten or start to become a little bit more expansive and more available to you. So that's where I would start, is those three things. So um, find a way to contemplate with some sort of beginning statement or a doorway you walk through.
Hmm.
That integration, make sure it has value in your life, so it's not just another experience. And then 3, meditation. And meditation is that ability to drop into the present moment so you can respond to life versus react to it. And once you're in that space, it's a good practice space. That's your dojo. That's where you kind of like walk in and you work with your spiritual technology. Those are my 3 points. Oh, and if you want to follow this conversation more, our website is thechurchofpsychedelics.com.
Terrific.
Yeah,
And I will put that all the references in the show notes, so folks they don't have to try to replay this to jot it down. They can just look in the show notes and get those
sounds good.
references.
And I'll make sure to get all those to you as well.
Okay, terrific. I'm going to hit our stop button, and we'll be on the line. We can chat for a few minutes after we stop recording.
Dean, thank you so much.
Thank you.